Good evening. Welcome to episode 10 of Willing Warriors. We're glad you found us and are able to join us. Tonight's episode is addressing family chores and paid chores.
So to undergird the teaching, I want to have you consider this. This is from Proverbs 18, verse 9. He who is slothful in his work is a brother to him who is a great destroyer. So he who is slothful, lazy in his work, is a brother to him who is a great destroyer. So if you consider in the book of Proverbs, it's full of graphic pictures. Some of these graphic pictures are even humorous. And they're humorous until we might see ourselves displaying them. So, it talks about a sluggard, a fool, a sloth. He talks about one who lays on his bed like a door, turning on its hinges back and forth, and his life is just given to rest and sleep. He's also full of excuses. He can't go out and work because it's too hot. And he can't go out and work because it's too cold. It's a little bit like a Goldilocks thing. There's never just the right time, right? He can't go out and work because it's rainy. And then there's the mother of all excuses. He can't go out and work because there's a lion in the street. So another funny picture is it talks about a sloth or a fool, and he's eating his food, and he's so lazy and so tired, he falls and puts his head in his food. So our culture is given one to entertainment, and there is some value and benefits in entertainment, but I think the things that we fall into is the amount of time that's given to entertainment. We have a lot of labor-saving devices, and so we've used our time now, instead of cutting the grass by hand and the dishwashers, microwaves, we've used all these labor-saving devices to entertain ourselves. And God, what has God called us to do? He's called us to work. He's called us to work. He's called us to give. So I'm going to ask my wife to talk a little bit about how we try to train some of our younger ones with that mentality.
So obviously, if you have a little 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old who they just love to be beside mom and dad, and sometimes that is frustrating, but we do want to encourage them and teach them from a very early age to learn to work, and that it is better to serve than be served. And little ones generally, although the spirit is willing, they generally are not prepared to do an extremely competent job. So trust me, if you give your 2 or 3-year-old because you've been cleaning the door and they really want to help, you want to encourage that. Just know that there'll probably be more streaks and smears and fingerprints after the training period than that it is clean. But you can encourage them and praise them for a willing spirit at that age. They can take all their toys out and play and be busy with that. At the end, they can clean up their toys. Now, if you have bins for every single thing, they're probably not going to be able to do that. But if you have a laundry basket in the middle of the floor or a hamper or something, so let's pick up the toys. And sometimes you just have to get in there with them, make a little game of it. But, more hands make less work. So you do want to engage them as soon as possible. Again, knowing that they don't have the skill sets to do a great job, but it's more just learning that, this is work and we can work together. You want to just do, at that age, very basic work, help set the table. And again, you don't want to have your china and glass with a 2 or 3-year-old, but melamine plates or the Corningware tends to, was it the Corningware? Anyway, the ones that break, it takes a lot more to break them. They can help set the table, wash maybe dry dishes. I have little grandchildren that help unload the dishwasher, the lower rack. They can pull their blanket up and on their bed, put their pillow on. And again, it might have wrinkles and hang off half the bed, but they can be proud that they've pulled it up. Help sort laundry. There's all kinds of things outside. There's pick up sticks before we mow the grass, if they've come down out of the trees. And just encourage them. Even a child is known by his deeds and whether what he does is pure and right. So get them the mindset very early on that they can help.
Let me speak a little bit to dads about that. So I know when you have your young child working close beside you, and as my wife says, they wanna be involved. It's not efficient. It's not efficient. But what you're doing is you're making an investment. When you include them and you engage them, you're making an investment. You're seeking to win their hearts. And if you win their heart, that investment will pay off years later. So take the time and know that the effort is not on efficiency, but it's on winning their hearts. The other thing I want to encourage you to is think about the proportion. God set the example. He worked for 6 days. He rested one. So consider that proportion. He's calling us to work in a similar fashion. And then think about what happened, what he did. He went and created the world in those 6 days, and he blessed. We are blessed as we consider that. And so now working is with the express purpose to bless others. So I am more than willing to trade my cash for somebody else's labor. If my car is broken, I'm more than willing to pay a mechanic to have it fixed. If I want a dinner with my wife, I'm more than willing to pay a chef, wait staff, to set the tables, to prepare the food, to open the wine, to clean up after us. So this is a blessing. So the biblical order is to work for 6 days and doing things that are glorious and good to bless others. So that's what our mentality should be. So let's do that ourselves, and let's encourage our children. As we talked earlier about the younger children, now I'm going to ask my wife to talk about how we we encouraged our older children or young adults to work.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I hope if I'm winking at you, it's just because I have something in my eye.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry about that. Yeah. So you have older children, and I found it something I had never considered before. We read a book to our children a few years back, Do Hard Things, and the author's premise, as far as like those, we call them teenage years, that the Bible refers to children and the Bible refers to adults. Now, we know that children, 12, 13, 14, are not fully, generally, especially in today's society, they're not going to be out there and earning their own keep. But at the same time, that period from 12 to 20 is not, oh yeah, let's just go do whatever you want to do. And honestly, that's a time when they have the most time and an opportunity to work and build more skills. So we understand that we're not, so while we call our 12-year-old a young adult, yeah. So anyway, we need to work 6 days, and children and young adults need to be encouraged to do that and to give them examples of that. That might include, okay, we're no longer just, doing the bottom rack of the dishwasher, but we're going to do deeper house cleaning skills. We're going to build their skills as we extend hospitality to others, preparing food, serving food. If we have a fireplace, the older ones, they bring in the firewood. They help Dad split the firewood. If you have gardens, there's a lot of work that goes into gardening, weeding, picking the vegetables. And as they become older, obviously, it would mean that they can also do more of that work unsupervised. So you might come back as they're still learning and check on it and say, you did a great job, or would you bring the broom back? I don't think you hit the perimeter of the room. So I've had to do that on occasion. Feed pets or animals if you have a farm. They can help a lot more on that. We have a daughter that's put a lot of work into playing the piano, and she plays for worship on Sunday. Another daughter makes communion bread, and everybody appreciates that. As they enter adulthood, they just need to learn that there is more work as they do their studies and those other skills. There's more work and actually less play.
Yeah. So there's often a pattern that people do, which is to give their children allowance. So here's money for what? Well, just for money. So we didn't really buy into that. What we did is we kind of divided chores up to what we would call family chores or regular chores, things that you had to do in order to support just the daily activities of the family. So this was a way to change your focus from thinking about you to be blessing others, right? Cleaning up, making food, what have you. And these you didn't get paid for. You just learn to work and to serve others. Then after the regular chores were done, as the children got older, then we would do what we would call paid chores. So these would often be special projects that kids would take up. We owned some rental property, some Airbnbs, and so as the children got older, they learned how to paint, they learned how to do drywall, they learned how to do some basic plumbing, some basic carpentry. We would pay them for that. Often at that age, young adults are directed towards what I would call fast food. We're not against fast food. In fact, one of our sons did spend some time at Chick-fil-A and learned how to be very efficient. But it's got some downside, right? You've got to, in fast food, you've got to, often adults have, or parents have to provide the transportation to get them there, to bring them home. We lived pretty far out of town. In some fast food places, you had to question the environment with when everyone's a young adult there. So we didn't often take that approach, but we did the regular chores and the paid chores. And what we tried to do is we paid them what was appropriate for their labor and for their skill. The more that they could do unsupervised, the more we would pay them. It was also a really good task for them to learn that when you work for 5 minutes, you get paid for 5 minutes, and it's not much. When you work for 1 hour, you get paid more. So this was a way for them to see that sometimes they have to work by the sweat of their brow. But the goal is always to bless others, right? And so hopefully they could see how those blessings were done to others. As they go about working or go about living, we found out there were some code words that children would often use. So you want to address one of those code words?
So I would be shocked if there's a parent out there that hasn't heard, "I'm so bored." So that's generally, that I found, is generally code for, "Oh, I'd really like to watch a movie," or "I would like to play video games," and in moderation, I believe that is okay. But I have a friend from years past that she would keep a list of 50 activities on her refrigerator, and if she ever heard that, they knew they would have to go to the refrigerator and pick out an activity that they could do, or mom could also provide some work for them. Well, they would get bored, which generally means I've got a lot of extra time and I just don't know what to do. So a lot of times you can go above and beyond of the family chores, the paid chores. Well, then Kevin was talking about blessing, and especially for children or those young adults, for the children to send a letter to maybe grandma and grandpa or somebody that was sick at church. Maybe they could send that out, draw a picture. For those young adults that have a lot of time, they could offer themselves as, a free source of maybe a 2-hour an afternoon once a week or every other week for a young mom, or go help an older person that needs a bathroom clean. Maybe it's difficult, and teach them to serve and rake leaves, do yard work, food prep, but not necessarily for payment, but just as a work to bless others.
So as we talk about work, I think we've lost a biblical premise. And so what work has become in modern age is a paycheck. I go for a paycheck, I have benefits, I have security. And this is a false idol. Instead, what we should see is that we should view it in this way, is that God is calling us to a vocation. And so what he does is he's given us all talents. He's given us eyes to see needs, and we should be willing to go out and meet those needs and to bless others. We should be working at developing those skills and talents to be even more proficient in how we bless others, whether it's cooking a meal, computer programming, fixing a car, whatever it is. Carpentry, we should be continuing to work and work and work at it. The proverb talks about, he who is skilled in his work will serve before a king. We all, as we serve Christ, are always serving before the King, the great King. What's he call us to do? He says, that which you do to the least of these, you do unto me. So as we have somebody we're serving, where we should see them as Christ, that we're serving them as we would serve Christ. We're going to do the best job that we can, not for our glory, but for his glory. So as you think about work, think about your calling, your vocation, your talents, your skills. Use the example of the pilgrims. They show up on this continent. There's no job applications. There's no factories to go work in. They just have to learn to do stuff. They have to identify needs. They have to learn to bless their neighbor. So think about your calling to bless your neighbor. Earlier we talked about code words that children use, bored. There are also code words that parents often find them using, so maybe you can address that.
So in today's society especially, I think we hear a lot about, a child's self-esteem. Moms praise their children for getting out of bed, participation ribbons. And I think that there's a genuine meaning to bless children, but oftentimes I think it sort of has the opposite effect in that children learn to believe that the world revolves around them, and that nothing is required of them, and everything that when they turn around, they're getting patted on the back. But the biblical model is learning to being productive, to be responsible, to be useful, to bless others, especially like within the family, within a neighborhood, within a church, to help build community and learn to do things for others, and to love others by working.
So imagine Mozart using the self-esteem model. So here he is writing these great concerts, right? These great symphonies. People say, wow, this is wonderful. Imagine another child who has learned to make bread. As we mentioned, our daughter makes communion bread. And people say, this is really good bread. These children who are busy working, serving others, they don't have self-esteem issues. They are getting feedback more than from mom for just getting out of bed or participation ribbons. They're getting honest feedback when they're doing something well. So remember where we started. I started with Proverbs 18, verse 9. He who is slothful in his work is a brother to him who is a destroyer. So God has called us to be builders. Think about where he put Adam and Eve. He put them in the garden, all these raw materials in the ground, in the trees, all around. And he says, go to work, tend the garden, till the garden, build, excavate. And now look at where the scripture ends. Go to the back end of the book of Revelation. We go from a garden to a grand civilization in a city where there are people building and building community and culture and great buildings and works of art, and they're blessing others. So take up your work 6 days, do it well, do it as unto the king, include your children in with your work, teach them, and so win their hearts. And know that we serve one another as we are trying to serve God. I'm going to let my wife close out this issue for us.
Well, we appreciate you sitting with us and joining us for this episode of Willing Warriors. We just wanted to say also that we have received some feedback, and we really appreciate that, and look forward to more. If you have questions or other comments, we appreciate that. Thank you. May God bless.